I was sitting on the porch of my grandfather's cabin sipping coffee when the first bulldozer crawled over the ridge. At first I thought they were lost construction workers, but then I saw the neon signs nailed to my fence line. Demolition order. They didn't even knock. They didn't ask. They marched straight onto land my family had owned for 3 generations and treated it like an abandoned shack. I ran out barefoot, mug still in hand, yelling for them to stop. That cabin wasn't just wood and nails. My grandfather built it after returning from war. My father taught me how to fish off the dock. My nieces learned how to swim in that lake. Every plank, every nail was memory carved into time. But the HOA didn't care. They said I hadn't paid my dues, that I owed thousands, that they had the right to erase my family's history. With one swing of a wrecking ball, neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering that you never win against the HOA. That fighting them only makes it worse. Maybe for ordinary families that was true, but what the HOA didn't know was that my family is not ordinary. My brother, my sister, my father and I all wear the same badge. We are federal agents trained to uncover corruption, track predators, and dismantle criminal empires. They thought they were about to demolish my home. They had no idea they had just declared war on the wrong bloodline. The cabin sat at the far edge of Pine, Hollow Lake surrounded by pines, so tall they looked like watchtowers. For decades it had been untouched by politics or neighborhood drama. But that piece shattered the day Karen Whitlock stepped onto my driveway. Karen was the president of the HOA, the kind of woman who wore spotless sneakers that had never touched real dirt and sunglasses that reflected your face back at you like a warning. She strutted up my gravel path with a clipboard tucked under her arm, as though she was walking into a courtroom, where she alone was judge and jury. Mr. Hale, you are 6 months delinquent on your fees. Per Section 14, this property is subject to removal. I held up my receipts, stacks of them, all paid. Check again. Karen's lips curved into a smile that wasn't a smile. Our records say otherwise. With a snap of her fingers, 2 board members in matching polo shirts walked up and pinned another neon demolition notice to my porch beam. The wood groaned under the nail like it hated what was happening. The neighbors began to gather at the end of the driveway, whispering. Some shook their heads. Others looked away, pretending they hadn't seen anything. I caught words like, "Don't fight them, and they always win." That night the lake was calm, but my chest wasn't. Tea. The notice glowed in the moonlight, a reminder that the battle had only just started. And Karen, she wasn't done. Not even close. That was only the beginning. It started with fines. A slip of paper tucked into my mailbox. $50 for grass too long. $75 for dock in need of repainting. $100 for improper. Vehicle storage because my nephew parked his truck in the driveway. Each one more ridiculous than the last. I laughed at first. Thought it was some clerical mistake. But Karen wasn't making mistakes. She was declaring war inch by inch. The next week, she had the water company shut off my line, claiming safety concerns. I found myself carrying jugs of water from the lake just to flush a toilet. 2 days later, a tow truck showed up at dawn, trying to haul my boat away for unauthorized watercraft. The neighbors watched from their porches, some sympathetic, most too afraid to intervene. When I confronted one of them, he whispered, "Don't push back. They always find a way to break you." Karen, meanwhile, seemed to take joy in every escalation. She paraded through the neighborhood with her husband trailing behind like a cologne-soaked shadow. They took photos of my cabin from every angle. They left warnings taped to my windows. And one night, just before midnight, I caught one of her board members loosening the bolts on my dock ladder. Sabotage. I reported it to the sheriff. He shrugged. Said it was an HOA matter. Every small win I tried to claim slipped through my fingers. When I fixed one violation, they invented another. When I paid one fine, they doubled the next. My sister called it financial waterboarding. But cracks were starting to show. In their arrogance, Karen and her crew left trails. Paperwork that didn't add up. Signatures that looked forged. Money moving into places it shouldn't. And that's when the switch flipped. I stopped playing defense. One night, sitting in the glow of the demolition, notice still nailed to my porch. I called my family. My father, the investigator. My sister, the forensic accountant. My brother, the cyber agent. The HOA thought they were playing a neighborhood game of intimidation. What they didn't know was that I was about to turn Pine Hollow Lake into a federal crime scene. When you have a family full of federal agents, strategy is second nature. We didn't storm in guns blazing. We planned. Quietly. Calmly. Precisely. My sister started first. She got hold of the HOA's financials, the same ones Karen bragged about at meetings. With a forensic eye, she traced thousands of dollars, flowing not into community repairs but into a private account under Karen's name. New SUV, luxury vacations, personal shopping sprees. She had left a trail so bright it was practically neon. My brother worked his angle. He tapped into HOA emails and server backups. What he found made my blood run cold, threats written out in detail. Karen and her inner circle discussing making an example of my family. Digital evidence so damning it could bury them twice over. Meanwhile, my father played the quiet investigator. He went door to door listening. Neighbors who had once been too scared began to open up. One by one, they shared stories of extortion, harassment, and abuse. He recorded everything. My job was to hold steady. I fixed my dock, painted the porch, acted like I was breaking under the weight of their campaign. I let Karen believe she was winning. And then piece by piece we set the trap. We printed the financial statements and slid them anonymously into mailboxes. We hung copies of the forged signatures on the community bulletin board. We scheduled a special meeting and invited every neighbor to attend. The night of the meeting, Karen walked in with her usual swagger. But the air had changed. People weren't whispering anymore. They were staring, waiting. My sister stood at the front and began reading the numbers out loud. My brother displayed the emails on a projector. My father played the recordings. Every lie, every threat, every stolen dollar. All of it spilled into the open under the harsh fluorescent lights of the clubhouse. For the first time, Karen's voice cracked. Her husband barked that it was all fake. But the evidence was overwhelming. Neighbors gasped. Some shouted. One man slammed his fist on the table and demanded her resignation. And me, I just leaned back in my chair and smiled. The storm had finally shifted. The HOA's power was crumbling, and Karen knew it. The fallout didn't take weeks. It took hours. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Copies of the evidence were plastered on doors and posted online. The whispers that had once been in Karen's favor had turned into open outrage. Karen tried damage control. She stormed into the clubhouse shouting that everything was fabricated. She waved her clipboard like it was a sword. But the neighbors weren't buying it anymore. They shouted back, demanding refunds, demanding answers. That afternoon, the real storm arrived. A convoy of black SUVs pulled into Pine Hollow. Federal agents, my people. My brother stepped out, first badge flashing in the sunlight. The neighbors went silent. Karen froze on the clubhouse steps, her face pale. Karen Whitlock, the lead agent, called his voice sharp and heavy. You are under investigation for fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of authority. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras came out. Phones recorded. Karen stammered, insisting she ran this community. But my father stepped forward, his voice calm as stone. Correction. You used to. The sheriff clipped the cuffs on her wrists. Her husband tried to protest, but my sister handed him a warrant with his name on it. His voice broke into silence. The board members who had flanked her scattered. One jumped into his car and sped off. Another tried to blend into the crowd. But neighbors cornered him, spitting accusations in his face. The entire HOA empire collapsed in minutes. And there it was. Slow-motion justice. Karen being led away in handcuffs, while the neighbors, who once whispered, now clapped and cheered. I stood at the edge of it all. Calm, silent. Watching the sun dip over Pine Hollow Lake, while the woman who tried to erase my family's legacy was erased herself. Now I'll ask you, what would you have done if your home was marked for demolition? By an out-of-control HOA, drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear your stories. And if you made it all the way here, comment "Justice served." So, I know you are one of the fighters, not the bystanders. Because sometimes justice isn't delivered in a courtroom. Sometimes it's delivered right on your front porch.